This is from the website thewaythetruthandthelife.net.
April 10th, 2015. I've been listening to Michael Savage and Jesse Lee Peterson radio show talking about the difficulties with Obama, with the homosexual and women's liberation coalition, which is worldwide, against Russia here, their home and marriage policy. They've overtaken NGOs and human rights organizations for the most part, including the UN. They work to make jobs for themselves, and they talk about God and don't know whether they're atheist or have problem talking about the Quran. It says to murder. There's a girl from this apartment complex found a couple miles from here in a Muslim area, found her bones 2 years later. They've blown up the train on the way to Petrogorsk, killed a bunch of students a couple of times. Last year for Easter they planned to blow up a church to celebrate Easter in Mineral-Vody. At any rate,
this stuff about God, let's get this cleared out. Here's Dorina. How old are you now? 5 years old. And you believe you exist? You believe this is real? Do you believe God exists? Where's God? God is everything? That's pretty easy, isn't it? You believe in everything. God is not created or destroyed. We're made out of what? His dirt. Yeah. And I want to talk to people about this, but just how it's easy for you and how nice when you have testimony about what God showed you. Because Jesus said, I go away, I will send you the Spirit of truth who will teach you all things. And you're learning all the time. You like climbing in the trees. And you learn, be careful, you learn God's laws. It's so wonderful. When my grandma was born, they didn't have electricity. Didn't have it. They just had candles and lanterns. And have to get water from the stream or pull it out of a well. They have pumps. No cars. They were getting trained. Just getting trained. Steam. At any rate, I'm going to go on to explain God is everything eternal and infinite, but his density is finite. Matter is not created or destroyed. Energy is not created or destroyed. The ability to move matter in space, and space is infinite and linear. These things can be clearly understood. The ignorance of the university with its sophistry and imaginary and probability, distraction. You get money for millions and millions, and they found the God particle. The ether is real, and mass doesn't become infinite as approaches the speed of light. But that's a whole other thing. I'm going to ask Dorina before she goes, anything you want to say before Frank will go on and tell us how God builds and how we're part of life. You understand the Earth and the Moon were in a synchronous orbit, and life come up around what they called Pangea. on the earth, always facing the sun. Always facing the sun, a ring of light, and there were dinosaurs. And then the moon hit from behind, and the dinosaurs spread out there, even up in the South Pole. In the ice in the South Pole are dinosaurs, because it's spread up. That violates Coriolis of force. The force on the earth is always towards the equator. And with the moon striking, knocked that Pangea apart and spread it out. It's such a, and then they come up with all this gobbledygook of plate tectonics. It's magic going against the Coriolis forces. And, oh my goodness. At any rate, here was this place for millions of years that chemicals could form out of the dirt, out of the ether, out of the vorpons, the little circulating vortex rings like they make smoke rings. And they get together and they join, and everything that's stable lasts, and what isn't stable goes away. The chemicals, the stable ones stay. And then they build, and then something happens. They call it, it's called atom, life. Somehow molecules build molecules and can make themselves over and over. It's called atom. Atoms come to life. And he has never died. And then after a while, part of Adam, or one of Adam, go and attack another one and get inside. And they call that Eve. So Adam and Eve, Adam's rib is part of Adam. The genetics join, so you have what you call sexual union, man and woman, male and female. Way back, your plants are male and female, and then the ones that have the seeds and make babies grow, and a lot of times what? Who makes the baby? The dominator, the alpha male. Ha ha ha! And who's the girl who gets the baby? Look at me, look at me. And attracted to being baby. It was important. I mean, when you get married, you don't want to marry a cousin or somebody close relative to you, you know, because there's bad things in your genetics that you share with a relative. And when you marry them, the bad part is in both sides. The DNA is like a ladder. Two sides, like you climb a ladder, this side and this side, one side from the mama, one side from the papa. And there's all these rungs you climb. And if there's a bad one on both sides, the goofy baby, you know. And that's why even Eskimos, they didn't care. Some man come through, they don't make the baby with my wife or daughter. Because so few of them, they were inbreeding, marrying cousins and brothers and sisters, and we have all kinds of birth defects, sick babies, you know. Anyway, that's how, and then, you know what? The great apes, you know, apes and chimpanzees, you know they don't kill their babies. They love them. And the mamas, and they breastfeed them. Look at your teeth. You're getting the second molar. Great apes breastfeed their babies till they're getting the second molars. Yes. Yes. And they don't kill them. And then come along humans. And then women don't want their babies. They throw them off the cliff. They throw them in the river. They let them out in the woods for the animals to get. And then they get civilized. And they worship like something from a stone, like Moloch. They even say Abraham's father used to make idols. And the women would sacrifice their baby to the idol. And like Moloch, and arms out like this. And they would build a fire, and the priest would beat on a drum while the women put their baby in there to go into the fire to Moloch. And they beat the drum so they don't get the baby going in, or she's going on fire. What stopped that? That was Abraham, the idea of Abraham. Now they talked about him for 1,000 years after he lived. They said his father made idols and women would sacrifice to them. But Abraham was the archetype. You know what archetype is? Like the ideal male archetype, an ideal papa, an ideal mama, like a good example. Archetype marriage, a man and a woman to really do good. How do you know if a man and a woman really do good as a marriage? Remember we talked about how do you know if a tree is good? Well, how can you tell it's a good apple? You forget? How do you know it's good apple? By its fruit you shall know. And so, is Grandma and I good Grandma and Grandpa? How can we tell? You're our fruit. Are you good? Yeah? You good part? I'm trying to be a good part. Anyway, so here, Abraham not sacrificed his son Isaac to God and start a culture that respected children. And that went on, and when they spent time in servitude in Egypt, and Moses get them out, but in Egypt, the Pharaoh, the king, could have, say, kill this one, kill that one, take this, take that, do whatever we want. And they actually have the commandments, the laws of the dead, that they would say, I have not stolen, I have not done bad things when they die. But Moses wrote down the 10 commandments. Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, love God. Where's God? Yeah, right here, right here, right here. Love God. Make it a better world. Heaven is that perfect world we can make if we work together and do a good job. Anyway, where are we at? When Moses come out to make these commandments to protect children and the culture, and he made priests, that was the government to take care of people. You only had to pay 10% taxes in those days, not like they got paid much. But the priests were the government, and they taught people the laws, so they behaved. And they even, when they have these worshiping Moloch and killing their babies and attacking and killing the Jewish people who have a culture of respecting babies. So then Joshua, go this village where, like the Muslims teach the children to memorize the Quran, and they'll go and kill themselves with suicide belt. So they go to Muslim heaven and get rewards and all that stuff. All their magic, Their children will do that because they're father's babies. So what Joshua did was destroy the whole city. Took nothing. Didn't take their horses, their cows, nothing. Just kill everything and get rid of that evil. So it'd be a safe place for children to grow up. And then what happened? They get corrupted. And every time women get some money, they can hire somebody. They don't want to take care of their baby. Why don't women want to take care of their baby? Why don't they want?
Because when the male to a male, it's a baby.
Well, why do the women abort here in Russia? Sometimes they abort, kill more babies before birth than they alive. Why? And the monkeys don't do that. And the monkeys don't sacrifice them to some god or something else. So monkeys don't send them off to kill themselves, attacking other people, other monkeys. They protect their young people. Why the humans don't? I can tell you. There's hate. You know where the hate comes from? That's alpha male. I'm going to make babies. I take you and I'm going to make babies with you, whether you want it or not. And so, and he beat up all the other boys. So the boys hate him and the girls hate him. It's dominant hate. There's hate in the dogs and cats. You can see it out here. The alpha male beating up the other boys and raping the girls. The thing is, it was before the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Do you know what knowledge of good and evil is? You think Mama Monkey knows good and evil? Do you think she knows Moses' laws? Don't murder. They don't murder their babies. They don't have some law. They don't think. And here's the secret. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil is when we, about 10 million years ago, come out of the jungle to out and chase the herds. There was then a change in weather, and there was a lot of grassland and herds were growing. You know what a herd is? Like a bunch of cows, a bunch of sheep. And so we were living in the jungle, eating fruit and stuff. And we come out and learn to chase and eat the meat. And learn to talk. Men are different than women. Did you know that? You want to go with Grandma now? You want to go? Okay, and I'll do it. Thank you. So, the reality is, men have millions of more brain cells and right and left hemisphere specialization. The talk about the corpus callosum and the two hemispheres are like in the monkeys. They're basically duplications. A woman can have a stroke and still manage to walk and talk. Where if the stroke happens in the hemisphere where language is for the man, he's not much more catastrophic because the male brain is specialized. The right hemisphere is the left brain connected with the right hemisphere is more like pattern nonverbal thinking. That's what is dominant with the female, and that's what's the way the apes are. But the logic of the left brain for males from fighting and hunting and using logic and speech to communicate with one another, to plan the attack, to plan the defense, go on for millions of years. And what survived in male genetics is that which makes more brain cells. There is a fundamental difference in the brain size, and it's also the Oriental brains are the biggest brains. The European white people are in the middle, and the Africans who didn't have to go through so much would strain and cause more development in order to survive. They were still living in Africa and doing quite well. But that's the thing. And as far as the problems we have today, this genetic hatred is there. The resentment of the alpha male and the manipulation. And on one side you have the female manipulative attraction to the invader, deceiving themselves because just rationalize and justify and accuse and do whatever they need to do to survive, and they have babies. They're attracted to the alpha male whether they want it or not. Even they hate it. That is what teenagers are attracted to, the outsider. And there's reason for that too, because of the need for different genetics. If you look at the inbreeding genetic disability, it's that simple, and it's that simple. We've got on the one side, you've got the manipulative female that tended to survive, and on the other side you have the dominant male, and in between you have the boys and girls that feed up and get along there against the alpha male. So you'll have the lesbian and homosexual group with the women's liberation, and big group in the middle that has control in universities. They talk about socialism. It's anarchy, not wanting to be dominated. But there was a quite healthy culture. This genetics is what survived. It's what had babies. But there was a culture that overran much of the genetics. They were not Christian, but they were used by the Russian lords, invited to come in after they had been conquered once, and then the conquerors had gone away. They invited them back because they were so honorable, and the Russian lords were fighting among themselves. And then later on, the Byzantine Church in what's now Turkey, used to be a Christian country, they invited them to come and help fight. The Byzantine Empire had become degenerate, the same as Babylon, the same as every society with affluence. As soon as they get affluence, the women don't want them. The hate for the male, the resentment is there, and it's projected because of logical speech, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They associate the baby with the male. So the genetic resentment of the male is projected onto the children. Yes, they love them, but they don't want to be bothered. It's a conflict in all women. It's genetic conflict. But the culture, the culture that built the mammoth bone homes for thousands of years, there was a culture that survived hunting woolly mammoths in America, and then after they were all destroyed there, they still had that culture in Asia and Europe, and hunting the woolly mammoths. The men had to work there. That's where the boats came from. You're talking about 3 tons of meat. How do you carry it from all the way up in the northland to Ukraine, where they built the mammoth bone homes? You have big boats. That's where the big boats, and they put up these megaliths with a big rock on top to say, we were here. And they worked together. They kill these big animals and haul the meat and build homes. And there was a culture of male respect, and males working together, and the females that were trustworthy and loyal were the ones that had the highest regard. And yes, there was male dominance with their logic. They cared for their family. That kept on in when the Muslims invaded Spain, and that they could take the areas of where the Swedes had come. The Vikings. The Vikings were the result of this, as were the Goths, who came down and converted to Christianity, and it was basically from the time of the apostles around the Black Sea. The home churches have existed. The Goths came down and spread that over into Europe, and the source of the Amish and Mennonite But then the lords became umpty-umps and corrupted because they had wet nurses and babysitters, and women didn't want to care for their babies. But affluence everywhere, just like affluence in America now with welfare and what it's done. And daycare. At 6 weeks old, dump your baby in daycare at any rate. Or like the finance minister in France, get a cesarean section so you don't have to miss work. You want to have a baby that you want to miss work too. Anyway, the care for the home has always been when family working together. Farm families were the source of Buddhist and Christian loving culture with respect for elders. Now, in God we live and move and have our freedom. Like Jesus said, it's better I go away. I will send you the Spirit of truth that will teach you all things. We can learn God's laws, and we are corrupted in many ways, genetic. But we can learn to respect children, not just say the words, but in fact make sure they have the love that they need. Here's the thing. Obama didn't have what he needed. It's almost trivial. If a child, look at the children from the orphanage, Ceausescu's babies, and the autism and the banging their head against the wall. Back around the turn of the century, was being taught in the universities, it was named for teachers and lawyers. It was being taught that poverty was the cause of infant mortality. But Boston started keeping records, and come to find out with the death records of infant mortality, it wasn't the poor people. Here there were poor immigrants living 3 families to a flat, and no running water, and the babies dirty and crawling around in the dirt. They were healthy. The infant atrophy, marasmus they called it then, was amongst the wealthy and amongst those that were in orphanages. They were the ones with the high infant mortality. Even though you feed and bathe a baby, if you don't talk to it and move it, it's what a crime today. All these babies being pushed in a baby carriage where they don't get the bouncing and they don't get to see. Why can't a mother pick it up and walk with it on its back or hanging on its front so that it has that motion and the contact and the stimulation for healthy development? Because it's a habit. If it's healthy enough, they love themselves. Every baby is like a prince or a princess. They used to and you run around and make sure what their needs. You take them with you. The women used to take their babies with them out working in the garden or whatever. And you still look at the Amish where there's mothers that are able to give their children the nursing time that they need and the loving homes that can be built in these farm families. At any rate, this problem of children being neglected, causing them to not be able to rise above self-love. You need to love yourself. That's the foundation. And if you have enough love and care and discipline of a father who, out of a loving bond, you can't discipline a child properly if it's not out of your suffering. You love them and their actions are harming themselves and their home, and you won't tolerate it for their sake and for the home's sake. This culture of caring and discipline, not discipline out of hatred, discipline out of love. My father used to give me the strap. I was always curious and doing things I should. And I knew that. And I would cry real hard when he gave me a whipping with the belt. And he said, why don't you be like the Eskimos? They don't cry. At any rate, I never resented it because one time I was learning to ride my bicycle out the driveway, so that's where the traffic was. And I knew it was wrong. I'd get a spanking if I did it, but I wanted to do it. I went in the house and I asked my father to give me a spanking. I could go out and do something and not have to worry about getting spanked afterwards. At any rate, the levels of love. First of all, if there's enough care there, there's narcissism, self-love. And if there's a foundation of caring back, self-love is on others, loving others like self. Because narcissism, like Christ, is totally narcissistic. He was the whole world. He never narrowed it to himself. He loved himself and everybody and every part of God. He loved God, his Father, his source of existence. I just wished he had gotten married and given us an example. And by the way, you're not going to find the answer to how to make a good marriage in the university. I'm taught at the University of Silver, so he's a psychology professor. You're out left field. By their fruits you shall know them. If we want to build a healthy culture society, pick the grandparents who have raised a healthy family, that their children and grandchildren show it by the healthy lifestyle that they live. That should be a prerequisite for holding a place of judgment, of governmental representation, of the man, the spokesman, the logical brain hemisphere separation and specialization. But that's only half of it. It's the man and the woman working together. And from that team that has done the best, by their fruits you shall know them. That's the prerequisite for holding office in a healthy society. And the other thing about a healthy society is the home and the mother in the home. It's like here we have a group of apartments around a little soccer field and a playground with swings and teeter-totter and a couple of merry-go-rounds. The Russians respected their next generation. They didn't understand how important the mother in the home was, though. But they built these wonderful, all over Russia, they got all these playgrounds. And they gave good money to schools and teachers, and teachers were highly respected. They thought that's what the children needed. They didn't understand the most important was the first 6 months. The birthday is the most important. And every day after that is less important. The most important, I knew that teaching physics in the high school, that I wasn't that important. What I got was based on the home. Most of the homes that raised children, they wouldn't know how to pick up a hammer and build a chicken, let alone to take physics and that's what common sense. But so I was fortunate. The discipline was weeded out a lot of it. Enjoyed. I taught my experiment. The space program, I taught them that this intellectual learning didn't prepare engineers and mathematicians to work on reality. Well, the program of experimental learning. And my job was to set up the experiment with the children to go through investigating and discovering for themselves what is joy. At any rate, coming back to this level of development, the next level of development after narcissism is hormones attracted to the light. Boys have a different brain than girls, and they like to get out there and fight and run. And the girls, the genetics that is healthiest are the ones that cared for the babies. And that's still a big reality for the girls. Life, there's a part of them that hasn't woke up to the age of the elder now. And if they have a good father who gives them a loving, protection, caring home, and a good mother that respects their father and will accept his logical correction, things that she's doing that aren't logical, then you have an opportunity for higher levels of development. And there needs to be that loving, caring, interaction process, not stuck in a room studying or memorizing the Torah, or it might build all the intellect in the world for 2,000 years of Jews memorizing, but it doesn't build common sense history of the Jews hating Judaism, hating and rebelling against its domination, indoctrination, and lack of opportunity for individual sovereignty. So you find revolutionaries all over being born from the Jewish culture. It would happen from the Mohammedan culture too, except the rebel against Muhammad is the destiny. So cognitive dissonance set in, and everybody's ready to murder for Allah, or to keep their mouth shut because they don't want to be murdered. All right. So after this hormone drive, boys like boys and girls like girls. But then there's a point that the hormones start running, and the girls are attracted and attracted. The girls are especially attracted to the invader, the Tuscarora Indian Reservation. The girls in my village were attracted to the Indians on one side and the airmen at the missile site on the other side. And where I taught in Sweet Home High School, and they built the subsidized apartments to bring blacks and integrate them into the suburbs. There we all of a sudden had a whole bunch of blacks in the community, and had the problem of the dance, and nobody was dancing with the black girl. And Dr. Lapardia, the assistant principal, faculty, says, we've got to do something to help these black girls. The black boys like the white girls like the black boys, but the white boys don't like the black girls. And they have a dance, the black girls come without invitation, and then nobody dances. We gotta integrate them. And it had nothing to do with black and white. The same thing went on with my wife. She grew up in a farm family of home church people in Armenia, and it was the same thing there. The Russian girls that would come into Armenia were attracted to the Armenians, and the Armenians didn't have respect. The older Armenian countries, the Armenians had been overrun by the Arab Muslims on one side and raped, and then overrun on the other side by the Turkish Muslims and raped and murdered to the point that they changed the color of their skin, and their culture is more like Muslim. The same thing, South America, much of South American culture is basically Islamic, because Spain, same year that Columbus discovered America, Spain finally pushed the Muslims out, but it did for 700 years. It been under Spanish, under Muslim domination, where the Christian subjugants had to provide virgins for the harems and all that kind of stuff. And then they were free, and the Catholic lords come in And they act like the Muslim lords. But to keep their power, they give inheritance to the eldest son to keep the estate and the lordship together. So here's all these other sons of the wealthy, powerful, and they become priests and kings and go to the new world. And you wonder why you have the upper class from this background living behind walls with glass on, so the poor people can't climb over. And they have often have Catholic name, but the wealthy men have wives here and there. They don't marry one; it's all legal. Otherwise, they have an apartment, and it's part of the Muslim heritage. They live with a Christian name that have the Muslim alpha male dominance and as many wives as you want. But that's in Central America, the corrupted culture that in Mexico and all the beheadings if you have the ability to love the opposite sex and the morality to form a home as a foundation to bring a child to respect it enough as a home, and how wonderful it would be. Like here, the children can go out and play, but how wonderful it would be if there was a playground with single family homes around, and everybody has gates going to the playground in the back. There's a community, private community area for children to play with and develop those relationships. How important it is. Dr. Donna Fiorito, the Western New York Child and Adolescent Psychiatrist, leads a children's seminar and come down to talking about psychiatric disability. His institute is the main referral center for Western New York public schools of children who have psychiatric problems. And I have been punished by the superintendent for confronting this alpha male dominance and lies and manipulation. He wanted to try and force me out. He had a special course made, Math for the Building Bridge, where they brought all these boys that had been thrown out of other schools from the Board of Cooperative Educational Services school, and I had to teach. And I was glad for the opportunity. When I had this 8-week seminar to meet the children, and Dr. Donna Furrier was there from the Western New York Child and Adolescent Psychiatrist. We got through, and I had started the question and answer period by telling him, "It doesn't sound like you're talking about my bad boy." He says, "No. It's not the boys that are out in the street that end up with psychiatric disabilities. It's the ones that are stuck in the house, their mother making them study so they can go to university." And the following year, one boy graduated salutatorian and valedictorian, went to Harvard, and before the year was out, he was washing dishes in the restaurant, not far from me where I go and sit. At any rate, his father was a dentist, and his mother had made him study, but he never was out free play to develop the natural skills. The nerve growth factor was present in the brain that he needed, that freedom to experience reality, behavioral and physical. So this need and the levels of love, the levels of caring, from homoerotic to the hormones flow and heteroerotic. There's enough of a foundation, care and discipline and the upbringing of the husband and wife. They have a baby and it's precious. It's just what, and they run around and eat it. Takes perfectly good food in terms of either diaper change and love. The first level of unselfish love, altruistic love, Just love that little baby. If you have the help that you don't want to kill it, abort it, so daycare. And as your children grow, you start to take responsibility. You have a private home to keep you alone at night. It's not because it was given to you, because you worked for it. That Barney, what's his name, with the Congress, the homosexual Massachusetts, set up this policy that it was shown that apartment dwellers, just like here, they throw their condoms out, they throw their garbage out the window, they're on the 10th floor, they don't care what gets around. And private homes are kept. They're much more responsible behavior. And so Barney, what's his name, and his committee, well, let's make it possible for all these poor people that own their own home. They don't even really have to meet the criteria for getting a loan to encourage the banks to give them a loan and somehow things will work out, they'll become responsible. But it was nonsense. It was an act of caring, but it was ignorant caring, just like communism. They care for this education in school, but they didn't understand that the mother in the home is the most important part. And then the father who teach the discipline and guidance. At any rate, those higher levels of care, altruistic, caring about, and going to care about the society, the world of work and war. That's not just wanting everybody to have freedom. Actual parental control to make it a safe and sane place for people who raise their families, that they don't have to worry about some cult like Islam. Read the book, Surah 9, cut off their fingers, cut off their head. Come on, give me a break, would you? It's worse than Mein Kampf. Read the book. It's a theocratic pyramid scheme of world domination, alpha world domination. And on the other side, you have the look at me, manipulative, and working together with the anarchists, they destroy the power, hate the government, hate the big army that made it safe, because that's alpha males are in there. Well, but remember what I said, by the truth you shall know them, a man and a woman were raised to help each other, show by their family, their community service, that they are eligible for the whole office. And the building of the homes, the children not lived in apartments, like what made Germany great, that was just destroyed in the last few years, from the mother in the home, the child, 6 or 7 at least. Here, Obama in his second term in office said, we've got to have early daycare. Germany is graduating their students a year ahead of us from high school. And what he didn't say was they have a policy of a mother in the home. The children were starting school a year later than here and ending up with a year better. But Germany, with that culture of caring mothers as a foundation, had the integrity for quality control that built the highest respect because of the quality control in their manufacturing processes. There's reality there. We just need to observe it. In God we live and move and never be. And God is here and there. God is not creating and destroying. God is the eternal matter, space, and motion from which all things are formed, not magic, some sitting on a cloud throwing rocks on bad people. You're part of God. Maybe a good part of the cell in God's body, and a good part of that. Working together with others is an important part. And 28 when I was having my children, I was able to keep the mother in the home. Then they had to release riots. And they had to hide riots. Your mom is there? Oh, okay. Come here, say goodbye. Hurry up, hurry up. Say bye.
Goodbye.
Oh, bye-bye. But close the door. So where are we at here? We need to protect children. We need to ground children. We need to make it a crime and be irresponsible. We need to reward the mothers and the fathers. This women's liberation is the death of the men used to be able to support women with affirmative action. And here, just learned about yesterday, Michael Savage talking about this fellow from folks from India. He grew up in wealthy families and both professionals up in New England, and he wasn't too good at school. So in order to get accepted at a high-level university, he signed it as being black, but he was black, and he was there. And he got offers all over, even though his parents had money. Got scholarships, but he was ignored. Nothing to do with ability. All right, let's make it a better world.